It is Monday morning stand-up. James has his board open. The first developer speaks. Still blocked on the API integration, waiting on the platform team. The second developer nods. Same for me. The environment isn't ready yet. That's on DevOps. The QA lead chimes in. I can't start testing until the build is stable. That's a pipeline issue. The BA follows, waiting on the product owner to clarify the acceptance criteria. James writes 4 blockers on the board. Every single one points somewhere else. This is not an unusual stand-up for James. This is every stand-up. His team has become experts at identifying what other people need to do before they can move. The sprint is 8 days old. Velocity is stalled. And James is about to spend his afternoon in escalation meetings that will produce politely worded commitments that may or may not be honoured. The blockers are real. The helplessness is optional. Every Agile team operates inside a system, and every system has things the team controls, things they can influence, and things entirely outside their reach. The problem is not that external blockers exist. They always will. The problem is what happens when a team trains itself to focus exclusively on what it cannot control, and stops noticing everything it can. This is learned helplessness, a term from psychology that describes what happens when a person or group repeatedly encounters obstacles they cannot overcome and begins to assume that all obstacles are immovable. It spreads quietly. One developer mentions a blocker they cannot resolve. Another developer sees that naming the blocker was accepted without challenge. Soon, naming blockers becomes the team's default mode. And action, the kind of action that does not require anyone's permission, becomes increasingly rare. James has spent 3 weeks escalating. His escalations are valid, but they are slow. And while he waits for responses, the sprint burns down. What his team has not asked, what almost no team asks, is this: what could we do right now, with what we already have, without waiting for anyone? 100% blocked is almost never true. 15% free is almost always available. 15%. Solutions is a liberating structure designed by Henry Lipmanowicz and Keith McCandless for exactly this situation. The name comes from a simple observation. Nobody has 100% of what they need to solve a problem, but almost everyone has 15%, a slice of freedom, authority, and capability they are not currently using. Not because it does not exist, because they have stopped looking for it. 15% Solutions asks one question. What is the change that is within your existing authority, using only the resources, relationships, and capabilities you already have, that you could start right now? Not what could you do if leadership approved the budget. Not what could you do if the platform team responded. What could you do today with what you have without asking anyone's permission? Here is how you run it. 3 minutes of silent individual reflection. Each person writes down their personal 15%. What is in my control? What have I been waiting for permission to do that I actually do not need permission for? Then pairs. 5 minutes each. One person shares their 15%. The other asks, what is stopping you from starting today? The pair works together to make the commitment specific and time-bound. Then the group shares back. Not to get approval, to make the commitment visible and therefore real. What is in your control right now? The wall does not disappear. The blockers are still real, but the team stops staring at the wall and starts walking through the door. The following Monday, James does not open the stand-up with, "What are your blockers?" He opens with this: before we look at blockers, I want each of you to tell me one thing you could do today to move your work forward that is entirely within your own control. No dependencies, no waiting. Just something you could start in the next hour. 3 minutes of silence. James watches the room. 2 developers are writing. The QA lead looks slightly surprised, as if the question has surfaced something they had not considered. The BA is nodding slowly to themselves, then pairs. James hears specifics emerging that have never come up in a stand-up before. The developer blocked on the API integration realizes he can write the integration tests now and run them the moment the API is ready, cutting a full day of lag from the sprint. He does not need the platform team for that. The QA lead cannot test the full build. But she can write the test cases for the stories she does understand and review the acceptance criteria for ambiguities, work she has been deferring because it felt incomplete without the stable build. The BA does not have the product owner's clarification, but she has enough context to draft 2 of the 3 acceptance criteria variations and flag the specific question that needs answering, which takes the product owner 5 minutes to respond to rather than a full meeting. 6 commitments, all within the team's existing authority, all startable today, none requiring escalation, budget, or approval. James looks at the board. The blockers are still listed on the side. He is still going to chase them. But for the first time in 3 weeks, the team is moving without waiting for the world to clear their path. Within 1 sprint of running 15% solutions, 6 self-initiated improvements shipped. Not 6 stories from the backlog. 6 improvements to how the team worked, initiated entirely by team members using existing authority. Velocity did not skyrocket, but the mid-sprint standstill ended. The team moved. And moving, even partially, is categorically different from waiting. Escalations dropped from 11 per sprint to 3. Not because the external blockers disappeared, because the team stopped escalating things they could actually resolve themselves. James had a different experience too. For the first time in weeks, his escalations were the ones that genuinely required escalation, not the ones born of habit and helplessness. Agency is a muscle. It atrophies without use, and it rebuilds the same way. One small, specific, self-initiated action at a time. Before your next stand-up, write down your own 15%, not your team's, yours. As the PM or Scrum Master, what is the one thing within your existing authority that you have been waiting to do? Waiting for the right moment, waiting for approval, waiting for someone else to move first. Make it specific, make it time-bound, and make it yours alone, not dependent on anyone else's action to begin. Then bring the same question to your team this week, not as an agenda item, just as the first question before you look at blockers. What is the one thing you could start today that is entirely in your control? Drop your 15% in the comments. 1 sentence. What you are going to do and when you are going to start. I will reply to every single one. In episode 4, we meet Sarah, a Scrum Master whose problem-solving meetings always produce the same senior voices and the same solutions that never stick. The fix is an 8-minute peer coaching technique that turns your team's collective intelligence into the best consultant in the room. I will see you there.